Shalom, sweetest friends. Come, let's learn together. This past week's Parsha was Parshat Bo. And in Parshat Bo, the Jews are in preparation and going out of Egypt finally. Free people, free men. And there's an entire new system that the Jews are introduced to, a new way of living, a new way of approaching life, and completely putting aside the old one. In this week's portion, they're told to break free of two signature things. Time, the time of their masters, the time of the outside world, and to break free from the gods of the outside world, to completely dissociate so that they can take on the one true God completely into their lives. Regarding the first aspect of time, we see that the first mitzvah, according to Rashi, if you'll look at chapter 12, verse 2 of the book of Exodus, Shemois Yud Bet Pasuk Beis, you'll see that God is giving the command to sanctify the new moon. And this particular month, Rashi tells us, is Nisan. And in Nisan will be the beginning of all the months of the year. And the Torah goes so far to say that the following months and the months after will be considered the second month and the third month. And the origin of the names of the months that we know, like after Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, these can be interpreted as being somewhat Jewish, but they could have come from outside sources as well. So the names that we use today are not biblical names that are given to the months. Rather, month 1, month 2, month 3 is the way the Torah refers. And so there's something significant that the Torah is trying to keep on taking us back to, because if I'm celebrating the third month of something, right, if it's, for example, the giving of the Torah, so it's the third month since when? Well, since the first. And what happened on the first month? The Jews were freed. So what's the particular aspect that's coming about here? So I think its importance, Kiddush HaChodesh's importance, is shown actually all the way in the first Rashi of the entire Torah. So in Bereshit, on the word Bereshit, so Rashi tells us, and he's quoting, some say his father, because he's quoting Rabbi Yitzchak. So he brings down that the Torah is going to start like this and not start with chapter 12, verse 2 of the Torah. Because again, if it was just a book of mitzvot, a book of laws, and a book just for the Jews, why wouldn't it start off with the first the first command to the Jews? That would make sense. So he gives a very important reason that God is establishing who he is as the power of his acts. He told his people so that koach ma'asav higid la'amo. And through Hashem establishing who he is and his power and his reign and his dominion over the world, when the Jews have the land of Israel, they won't be called listim, they won't be called some robbers, some conquerors that came about to take the land. Rather, it will be clear to everyone that it's God who runs the world, it's God's world, and God gave this to the Jews, and the whole world should respect it. But within that, Rashi is saying a very good point. Why don't we start the Torah? Why doesn't Bereshit start with Kiddush HaChodesh? Which I think is a novel idea. Rashi could have made that the starting point of the Torah could originate from many places. He could ask that on many things. He could ask, why doesn't it start with our first father, Abraham, the story of Abraham? That would make sense. Why doesn't it start with going down to Egypt, where the story took place of why we were there? He could have had many, many places where he asked the question, why didn't we start here? But he chose to say, why don't we start with Kiddush HaChodesh? And I don't think he's asking merely a question about, oh, if it's a book of mitzvah, why don't we start with the first mitzvah for the nation? I think that he's saying something more significant. Bereshit bara Elokim, when God is creating, what would be the very first thing he creates? Well, I don't think it would be a substance. I don't even think it would be the heavens. Because Rashi's question isn't on Bereshit bara Elokim es hashamayim v'es haaretz. It's not in his Dibor Maskil. He's merely quoting his Dibor Maskil's Bereshit, the beginning, in the beginning, however you want to translate it, but it's something to do with the beginning. And the only thing that I can think of to make that connection between Kiddush HaChodesh, a new moon, and Bereshit is the conception of time. That here, right here, is God's conceiving of time. He is establishing for us that this is the beginning of time, and Rashi's wondering, within this beginning of time, why isn't there the command to sanctify that time? And so, we are taught a very important lesson coming out of Egypt. That for a master owns a slave's time. A master owns his worker's time. There's no time of his own. But now you're going to go be a free people. You're going to have your own time. And when you have your own time, you're going to have to make your own choices. And those choices have drastic ramifications. You can't just lean on your master. And so here we see a responsibility that is put forth to every single Jewish boy and girl to always go back and remember, no matter what month you're in the year. You could be in the 12th month, but it's the 12th month since Nisan. It's the 7th month since Nisan, since Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And always as a reminder that you are responsible for your time, that you have to sanctify your time, and that a Jew, his existence, he lives constantly sanctifying time, echoing and reverberating constantly the message of creation. That time, not only the world, but time belongs to God, and in that way we must act godly within that space, within that time. And so the Jewish people were given Kiddush HaChodesh. It drastically changed their world. They're no longer going according to a solar calendar. And hopefully together we can all sanctify time. Thank you.